Hey, what's up? I'm Channel Pup, fanboy supervillain. When it comes to Sonic, Sega are all about keeping the brand as strong as possible, and obviously that makes sense. Why wouldn't you want that as a studio? Well, unfortunately, we've seen a focus on branding come at the expense of quality products lately, from merchandising to supplementary media. And I think it's important for Sonic to really explode onto the scene now with real staying power and impress people. But I recognize that there is a lot to account for there when you are running a big brand with a lot of moving parts. So, in this video, I will be identifying some of the weaknesses of Sonic's branding, the effect it has on the product, and offering up some proposals for how to improve the brand while keeping on Sega's own terms. This isn't just about what I want to see so much as it is about how Sega can really make what they have work in the best way possible. I am keeping a business mentality in mind, even though I highly doubt that any Sega higher-ups are going to be watching this video. But I am aware that YouTube videos can capture the hearts of the fanbase. Remember the so-called meta era of Sonic, from like Sonic Colors through to Sonic Forces? Look at YouTube content creators like Jebzone and Jay's Reviews and the influence they've had on Sonic discussion on social media, and the paradigm shifts that have come with that. I'm not saying it's all down to them. I don't think you can pinpoint any one or two YouTubers that are responsible for changes to a franchise juggernaut like Sonic, but my goal here is to ultimately capture your imagination and get you talking about what you want, and maybe we can make a little difference. A pup can dream. Subscribe, Patreon, links are in the description below. You know what to do. No, but really, I appreciate every bit of support I get. Thank you so much. Now, I have had people ask me in the past when I've done sort of pitch-based videos, if you are pitching this on social media, does that not mean that Sega can never implement any of your ideas? Because, you know, it could be seen as plagiarism. Well, not necessarily. The ideas I'm pitching here aren't necessarily anything outright new. I'm basically using parts of the existing Sonic franchise to say, hey, let's do more of that, let's move more in that direction, that kind of thing. But even then, so long as I don't go up to a Sega executive directly and pass them notes, it should be fine. They can always just claim it's a coincidence. Even then, Sega, if you're watching this, I give you my permission to do this, because I just want to see this stuff happen. Alright, that's all cleared up. This video is going to be broken down into different sections of Sonic branding, and kind of how to improve them. We're going to start off discussing kind of the existing weaknesses of the Sonic the Hedgehog brand. Then we're going to talk more about kind of the characters, how they are represented. Then we're going to talk about aesthetics, and then we are going to talk about history and curation. So okay, history class, we're now in session. Since 2020, there's been a clear conscientious effort to tidy up the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, making it more approachable to newcomers. This is jump-started by the movie, introducing a much larger chunk of the new generation to Sonic than ever before. And so, Sega have been making some of the more quintessential Sonic games readily available on modern consoles, with new features for longtime fans. The Tales Tube web series has provided answers to many of the glaring oversights, burning questions when it comes to Sonic narratives and just how everything works. Character personalities are now more consistent from game to game, with supplementary media to firmly re-establish who these characters are and what they represent. Yep, the 2020s truly represent a turning point for the Sonic franchise. Or was it 2017? The Sonic Boom spin-off universe was officially retired. The comic license moved from Archie Comics to IDW, finally clearing out the Freedom Fighters and Western lore once and for all, keeping it purely to just characters and a world that Sega have given approval to. It was now firmly established that modern Sonic and classic Sonic would get their own respective releases. Yeah. Okay, maybe despite a few bumps in the road, Sonic Forces, 2017 was a big turning point for this franchise. Although, was it maybe 2014, when Sega established an entirely new continuity for Sonic with a fresh start and a major multimedia push, the Boom brand? Yep, that truly was a big turning point for the franchise. Or was it 2010? When 2D Sonic games were returning alongside 3D titles, when the franchise finally settled on a light-hearted comedic tone, when the longest-running voice cast were finally established, and when the characters' personalities were simplified for approachability's sake. Yep, 2010 sure was a turning point for the Sonic brand. Or was it 2007? Where they finally settled on the art style of this franchise, cementing these character designs forevermore. Yeah, that's just a lot of turning points, isn't it? Okay, look, for the past 17 years, it does feel like Sega have been in a state of spring cleaning when it comes to the Sonic franchise. Looking at what works and firmly re-establishing it, while taking what doesn't work and either revising it or trimming it off. There is a vision here that's becoming clearer and clearer. There's a clear pipeline for the new Sonic fan. Mobile games and the movies are introducing more and more newcomers to Sonic, and they want those newcomers to be greeted by great games like Sonic Origins, Sonic Colors, and Sonic Generations that are readily available for the current systems. And they want those people to get Sonic comics and TV shows that don't contradict the games on a narrative or stylistic level. They want them to be able to see characters and stories that they can actually engage with now, and a consistent aesthetic that is synonymous with Sonic. I can see that this is what Sega want for this brand. They are trying to establish a new life cycle for Sonic fans, so that little Billy on his mum's iPad will discover Sonic and Friends, quickly become enamored with these characters, he'll then play Sonic Rumble, he'll then beg his parents to take him to see the films, he'll watch Sonic on Netflix, he'll read the comics, he'll watch Sonic cartoons, and he's overall content with a nice, consistent, non-confusing universe. He's not going to wonder why his comics feature a different cast to the games. Little Billy will feel rewarded for sticking with the franchise because there are references and continuity across all the mediums. I see the vision. Make Sonic as big of a part of people's lives as possible to sell more product. Even I, as an adult, fall prey to this. There's a lot readily available here that I do have fun with. But spring cleaning shouldn't last 17 years. And there are now criticisms from longtime fans that things are looking just stale and dated. These new fans bought in from the movies and mobile games will be greeted by something that just kind of feels a bit corporate, tepid, and sanitized. We've got key art designed to go on a pencil case that's influencing the aesthetic of the rest of the products. We've got comics that tiptoe around the game stories so not to risk contradicting them, making them feel so inconsequential and wafer thin that it's barely worth returning from month to month. And very little of this has any real staying power. Pup from the future here, I just wanted to say I did actually kind of nab that from Game Apologist video on why IDW Sonic has kind of become stale now. It's a video I actually edited, and as I was editing it, I was just like, these are such good points, and it inspired this video, so that's where this is coming from. This is a sort of sequel to that. But I mean, is it not kind of too late to overhaul at this stage? With Sonic as a multimedia and merchandising juggernaut, even little changes to this branding will have to ripple out onto all different corners of this brand, and consistency is clearly a priority now. It's understood that there are three Sonics: your main Sonic, your classic Sonic, and your movie Sonic. And you don't want to muddy things up much further than that. I get it. But looking at Sega's current incarnation of the brand, I'm seeing a hierarchy. At the top of this hierarchy is Le Brand image. Things we expect from Sonic. That's this art style, these characters, these locales. Then just down from that, we've got the games. Character models that mirror that of Le Branding sheet. Familiar locales are included. Everything must conform to Le Brand, so the games accurately reflect the lunchbox that little Billy takes to school. Then down from here, you've got supplementary media. This is informed by the above. That's where you've got your comic books and your TV shows. But in my humble opinion, games should not be secondary to lunchboxes, and comics and shows should not be tertiary to video games. But here's the thing. The lunchboxes aren't exactly the epitome of dynamic art, with barely lit character renders smiling at the viewer from a location that serves no narrative purpose, and those are informing the games. And the games aren't exactly known for their excellent storytelling, yet these are what's influencing the comics, which are all about stories. But as I say, wouldn't want to contradict the riveting story of Sonic and his friends standing around on an island giving each other therapy. So here's Sonic and Tails exploring a cave while the original characters the writers have total control over get the real meat here. See you in a month's time. You see the problem? This hierarchy of power across Sonic multimedia is not complementary. I think instead of this linear hierarchy, what we need instead is more of a feedback loop. Let these things inform each other, and the end result of that makes the brand. the brand as a culmination of artistry rather than a foundation for artistry. Now, we have seen steps towards more of a feedback loop between the comics and games. Ian Flynn, writer for Sonic at both Archie and IDW, now writes for the games, which is good news. It's an early example of the comics finally influencing the games a little. That's a good step, but I think we need to go a little further. See, it's no secret that Sega have pretty strict character bibles when it comes to Sonic, and I'm not going to act like that's some out-of-the-ordinary thing for a character like this. There will always be established rules when it comes to what you can and can't do with a character in an ongoing franchise like this. For example, Sonic can't just clamp Tails in the face. Well, I'll be damned. The problem we have here is that over the course of the Archie comics, you can actually identify where Sega's input is as you move from Ian Flynn's earliest work on the comic to the post-reboot and now to IDW. When left to his own devices, Ian Flynn has written some of the best stories and character work that this franchise has to offer, allowing Sonic and his world to feel more fleshed out than ever before. Where under IDW, where Sega call the shots, the main cast feels more like mascots than actual characters, and are never quite allowed to ever go all the way with any arcs, development, or emotions. And so, we tend to spend more time with the original characters made for those comics that the writers can just do more with. Characters like Tangle, Whisper, and Lanolin are just more versatile than Sonic because they don't have those restrictions in place. So, I think Ian Flynn and Evan Stanley, as the two main writers on IDW Sonic, should be involved in the revision of the Sonic Bibles. They clearly treat Sonic, his friend, and his world with a great deal of respect and reverence. So I feel like we're at a point where when it comes to the conversation surrounding characterization, they've earned their spots at the table of the conversation. These talented folks won't damage the brand. As game apologists said, they'll only make it stronger. With that, I think the comics should be able to adapt the games. We're still not yet at a point where the storytelling in the games is truly comprehensive. Sonic Frontiers makes some steps in the right direction in that it treats the characters with dignity, but there are still so many unanswered questions about the Starfall Islands and the Ancients. A massive story expansion within the IDW comics would be excellent, one not bound by the gameplay formula. Then Frontiers the game and Frontiers the comic effectively market each other. Right now, the comics work around the game stories, but the game stories just aren't good enough to justify that. Should the writers of the Metal Virus arc really be holding the door wide open for the writers of Sonic Superstars to not tread on their toesies? In allowing the comics to expand upon the stories of the game, rather than these comics feeling like tertiary media, they'd instead feel like as strong of a way of experiencing Sonic as the games themselves, and I think the sales would go way up. Think about it. Lil Billy in 2026 loved Sonic and the Big Cheese, and he wants to learn more about the world of that game. So there's a comic expansion available for him where he can really see that story play out in its full narrative potential. He fought the Super Cheezo as a final boss in Sonic and the Big Cheese, now he can learn about Super Cheezo's backstory in the comic. Or maybe Little Jilly has read the Sonic and the Big Cheese comic and realizes that she can actually play through that story in the game. That would be so exciting from Little Jilly's perspective. There you go, feedback loop. The games and the comics can influence each other. So, in summary, let IDW Comics alumni such as Ian Flynn and Evan Stanley have a role in revising the Sonic Bibles, allowing these characters to truly shine and priming them for the stories that they want to tell. Have that carry over to the games, and then release comic tie-ins with said games that adapt and expand upon those stories. Alright, you guys ready to move on? Cool. Now let's talk about the aesthetics, the artwork. So, Sonic has a really awesome design, that needs to be said. Think about the amount of legwork this incredible design has probably done in sustaining the Sonic franchise. Like, if Sonic didn't have this amazing, striking design, the franchise would probably not have survived some of its lower points. But as long as this guy looks good on a pencil case, which he does, you can sell enough pencil cases to fund that next game. I've played and enjoyed quite a few video games, but I don't feel the need to necessarily have merchandise of them. But with Sonic, I do. Because he just looks so striking. But, yeah, no, this is not doing a great job at representing the strengths of that design, and, well, now the games have to look like that, and it just looks a bit bland and dated, doesn't it? But then surely if we change this, we gotta follow suit with the IDW comics and the toys, right? Well, no. I have an idea for how to visually refresh all of this in the least disruptive way possible. In fact, this idea allows for even more brand synergy than what Sega already have. So, let's start by asking, when does Sonic look his best right now? It's not in the games, that's for sure. It's not on the lunchboxes. It's here, in these animations by Powerhouse, headed by Tyson Hesse. Tyson Hesse just gets the Sonic aesthetic on such an immaculate level that he played a proactive role in redesigning Sonic for the movies. His talents have been well and truly recognized. But it's not just those animations, it's also the artwork in the comics. Look at how incredible all of this looks, and the same applies to the motion comic, The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. Now imagine if the games looked like that. Sega could utilize cel shading techniques to bring the world of IDW Sonic to the games. After all, they're no stranger to it. Look at the Persona series. It really does have a distinct visual identity to it, and it looks fantastic. Okay, you done looking at Persona? Now look at Sonic, and ask yourself, which of these looks better and has more zest? Which of these looks like the company's pride and joy, their flagship brand? Do we really think that Sonic looking more like this would harm the brand? And for more evidence that this would work in 3D games, check out JPEG Animations' Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog fan animation. They've successfully replicated the art style of that game, which already looked fantastic, and put it into motion. There's also the Sonic Frontiers anime opening by Drexus Animations, which, whoa, I never knew Frontiers could actually look good, let alone this good. But holy cow, it's like an IDW comic come to life. We've only ever really seen cel shading techniques utilized on very rare occasions when it comes to Sonic. Sonic Shuffle and Sonic Runners spring to mind, but remember when they released those impossible to get comic skins for Sonic Superstars? And they look 10 times better than the standard models. I only got these on Switch, so I'm not exactly reaping much of the benefits, but holy cow, a full game of this would be a million times better. It just doesn't make sense to me. Look at the box art from the 90s to the early 2000s. This hand-drawn artwork was people's first impression of these games, yet they never once tried to actually replicate that look in the game? Why? And man, imagine the box art for a cel-shaded Sonic game. You could have it illustrated by Yuji Uekawa again, or get the IDW talent in to design these covers. And naturally, the renders as well. Say bye-bye to this dated, barely lit, sterile garbage, and say hello to Sexy Town. Then think about how much further you could expand upon even that. I've been saying that the Powerhouse animations made to promote upcoming releases should be included in the games as either part of a menu, an unlockable, or go further. Have them do the opening and ending cutscenes, like how Marza Animation Planet did the event status cutscenes for, say, Sonic Unleashed and Sonic 06, while the rest was all in-engine. Because these animations really impress people. Imagine if the Knuckles prologue from Sonic Frontiers were the opening cutscene of the game, instead of perfectly adequate town over here. What a dazzling start that would be for this game. Now with this, you wouldn't even have to change the merch or anything, because it's still the same design sensibilities, just in a different art style. Now there is also a halfway point, and that's to just integrate more of those hand-drawn sensibilities into Sonic. Covers and renders could be hand-drawn, while the games keep relatively the same aesthetic. Here's an example of how this could be done. Let's look at the Sonic Frontiers side mission cutscenes, where you go up to a character, and you get a little bit of backstory on the world of the game, or the characters and where they're at. These are a really cool idea for populating these worlds and answering burning questions about the game, but just look at them and you'll see a problem. This is laughable. They are barely animated. Heck, in Final Horizon, they're not even moving their mouths. There is zero visual stimulant here. Whatever they're trying to do, it's just not working. Now imagine if you had this in the background, but you then had text boxes and illustrations of these characters expressing. Take a little look at this.
Amy, I know you're worried about the cocoa. You gotta take care of yourself, too.
I could say the exact same words to you, too. The cyber corruption is painful, but if you can handle it, so can I.
Well, you got me there. We'll get through this together.
I realize this does open the question of artistic congruency. Does it really make sense to go from hand-drawn art to 3D gameplay? And, well, Sonic CD wasn't exactly detrimented by the fact that its opening cutscene was hand-drawn animation, while in-game it was pixel art sprites. Sure, that was 1993, things were different then, but it also worked fine with the same sensibilities in 2022 for Sonic Origins. We had hand-drawn animated cutscenes leading into pixel art sprite gameplay. And it's not like when people booted up Sonic Superstars, saw the hand-drawn animated cutscenes leading into the 3D model gameplay, people were like, huh? What? In Crash Bandicoot Mind Over Mutant, every cutscene had a different art style, and this was just cool. It works really well. Personally though, I think it would be better if they just did a complete overhaul. Everything in-game cel-shaded. Where you can't afford or justify proper character animation, have PNGs to express for you. Box art and key art could all be completely illustrated, and in major event status cutscenes such as the opening and ending could all be 2D hand-drawn animation akin to what Powerhouse do. Sonic would look genuinely spectacular if they did this. Not only that, it would be a non-disruptive way to give the series a visual overhaul, because again, same designs, different art style. Merch doesn't really have to change, and this would probably run a whole lot better on the Nintendo Switch as well, considering that console is home to a lot of cel-shaded games like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. You don't need fancy photorealistic lighting when you're going for the cel-shaded approach. So the Switch wouldn't suffer for it, and the game would look good on the other consoles too because its art style would at least look deliberate. Plus, we also just had the announcement of a cel-shaded Mario and Luigi revival, Brothership, and these guys look the best they've ever looked. Artistry has always been at the forefront of the franchise, so it's just a shame to see it devolve to this extent. With that being said, we are seeing some improvement. Visually speaking, Sonic X Shadow Generations looks to be doing artwork right. The in-game visuals for Shadow Generations look like some of the best a 3D Sonic game has ever looked, thanks to the strong art direction and cinematography. And the promotional renders are also a lot better with nicer lighting and stronger, more expressive poses. I'm not saying Sonic can't work in 3D computer graphics, but looking at the artwork over this series' 30-plus year run, I can't help but think there's a well of untapped potential, and I don't see any valid reason to not explore that. So in summary, make the games look more like the comics and animations. There's a reason why people say those are beautiful, and then look at Sonic Frontiers and say it's fuck ugly. And then you put that stuff on the lunchboxes. Once again, feedback loop. IDW inspires the games in terms of artwork, and then that in turn inspires the lunchboxes and pencil cases, or in other words, le brand. Alright, you guys are doing really, really well, okay? We're now moving on to Sega's approach to Sonic history. Sega like to really assert that they care a great deal about Sonic history, staying true to their roots. And this is done through the presence of classic beloved level aesthetics and little injections of side-scrolling gameplay in otherwise 3D games, to demonstrate that no matter how unique and innovative the latest Sonic game is, Sonic will always have a special relationship with his past. Aww. Unless that past was from a non-Japanese licensee. Let's talk about Archie Sonic and the Freedom Fighters, because what the hell is this business strategy? So Sega basically have a vision for this franchise going forward, and it doesn't include the characters of the Sonic SatAM cartoon or the Archie Sonic universe. After all, these came about a time when there was less material for these licensees to work with, where now the Sonic universe is well and truly populated with an abundance of great characters, so they don't really need the Freedom Fighters anymore. I understand that these just don't fit the vision. Can they be made to fit? Sure. Would it make me happy to see them make an appearance in a future game? Absolutely, I'd geek out. But it's not so much the future that I'm concerned about for the Freedom Fighters. It's the erasure of their past. As of right now, there is no legal way to purchase republished Archie Sonic comics. You can buy them secondhand or you can pirate them, and those are your only options. The Archie Sonic comic series lasted 24 years, and these characters were at the forefront of this for 24 years. And Sega have absolutely no intentions of giving new readers or familiar readers any legal avenue of purchasing hundreds of comics from people who absolutely left their stamp on this franchise. Forget about it. It doesn't fit the sacred timeline. Speak of the devil, meanwhile Marvel Studios are in the process of rebooting the X-Men, all while bringing back actors from the Fox universe for a last hurrah in the multiverse saga, and reviving the 1997 X-Men cartoon. Sure, Tom Holland is Spider-Man now, but that didn't stop Sony from releasing the Spider-Verse films, and we even got to see that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's takes on these characters still matter to Sony and Marvel as they returned in Spider-Man No Way Home, and were celebrated with cinematic re-releases. Now imagine if as soon as the MCU rebooted Spider-Man, they stopped publishing Blu-rays of the previous Spider-Man films. That's basically Sega's strategy towards Archie Sonic, and it's asinine as there's money on the table there. It's also absolutely possible. As Game Apologist mentioned, IDW procured the license to the old Archie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics. They could absolutely do the same if Sega would just let them, but I know what we're all going to say next. Ken Penders. Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of characters here that Sega no longer have the legal rights to, as Ken Penders won that custody battle in court. Now, I do think Sega could probably lawyer up and get everything settled, but at the same time, maybe this is an opportunity to just create a little bit of Archie Sonic history. Rather than releasing every Sonic story from Archie, they could release a selection of them in compendiums, all the major arcs and stories that Sega have the legal rights to. And because I know Sega are worried about brand confusion, even though kids aren't that stupid, they could even have a splash page at the start with some flavor text, something to the effect of, "This isn't the Sonic you know. In another dimension on the planet Mobius, Sonic and the Freedom Fighters protect Not Whole from the tyrannical Dr. Robotnik." Yada yada, and so it goes. Could call the collections Sonic and the Freedom Fighters. Volume 1 collects the introductory issues before going into Mecha Madness and Operation Endgame, and so it goes. And then even just an acknowledgement in the games would be a bonus. Sonic Origins has its museum for people who want to learn more about Sonic history beyond just the games. Imagine if there were an entry in said museum about Archie and Fleetway Sonic. Could just say something like, from 1993 to 2017, Archie Comics published Sonic the Hedgehog comics featuring a unique take on the character, adopting the cast of characters from the Saturday morning cartoon. I think this museum was a wonderful idea, and I'd love to see more of that in other Sonic games. Imagine a Sonic Frontiers 2 where you could collect currency around the map that can be spent on museum items, kinda like Sonic Origins meets Blather's Museum. To understand the impact of this, to a lot of Americans, this was Sonic. He was that hedgehog who worked with the Freedom Fighters and battled enemies like Ixis Naugus and Mammoth Mogul. But with Sega refusing to acknowledge any of this in any capacity, it's like they're not only trying to cull Sonic's history, but yours too. Imagine if Sega decided to move things in a new direction, which meant that stories like Sonic Adventure 2 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles were not only not canon, but that you'd never see the characters of Shadow, Knuckles, or Amy Rose acknowledged ever again, all in the name of the sacred brand. But don't worry guys, look, it's Green Hill Zone! Same goes for Sonic Boom. Don't just name drop Styx if you have no intentions of actually showing her. Dicks out for Styx. So wrapping up this whole ass video now, in summary, I think across the board it just makes sense to have more of a feedback loop than the existing hierarchy. IDW and the games can influence each other as far as stories go, with IDW and Archie alumni bought in to rework Sega's mandates allowing these writers and these characters to truly shine. IDW's artists should be given more hands-on positions when it comes to the games, getting to design key art and better yet, influencing the in-game graphics. Not only would this look better, it would make the brand more cohesive, which is something that Sega clearly want to prioritize going forward. And then when you put that stuff in a lunchbox, you've got one sick lunchbox. Game Apologist said it itself in his Is Sonic Growing Stale video. IDW currently have some of the absolute greatest talent ever to work on Sonic right now. These are people that would only enrich Sega's precious brand, so they should lead the branding of this franchise going forward. And Sega, don't pretend you care about Sonic's history when you refuse to acknowledge 24 years of it. Do all of it or none of it. And that is my pitch for solving the Sonic branding problem. What do you guys think? Do you have ideas of your own? Comment them below and discuss. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below is a link to my Patreon page, with a special shout out going to the patrons in the $5 and above tier. We have RT0, Calx, Hypes, Glad Goku, Dare Denny, SSS06, Kale Bennett, Ken K, Dazzle Fizzle. I've sent my evil clone to find some helium. Cyrus the Skeptic, Biotin. Oh no, I've used up all the helium, what am I meant to do now? And Vera Wild, thank you good folks so much for your generosity. And to those of you at home, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Get out of my house.